Welcome into the Alabama Football Report. I am your host today, Chris Daughtery, and on today's show, we're going to be talking 2025 defensive line targets for Alabama. One just got a scholarship offer, and the other one is scheduled for an official visit. We're also going to be talking about some comments that Greg McElroy made about Kalen DeBoer's chances of winning a national championship here at Alabama. And before we move on, I just, at the top of today's show, want to mention that South Alabama linebacker Khalil Jacobs has committed to Missouri out of the transfer portal. That coming from Hayes Fawcett of On3. So we will see you in Tuscaloosa on October 26th. Now, we posted a depth chart video a couple of weeks ago here, and that got 309 comments. And we appreciate everybody getting in the comment section on that video. That is a May record here at the Alabama Football Report. But on this video, we want to break that record. So if you hate Auburn as much as I do, spam AUBIE in the comments section. Or if you're just genuinely a nice person and you don't want to say AUBIE, spam Roll Tide Roll for me in the comments section, RTR, whatever's easier for you. We're going to pick the top 3 people who put the most comments in, and we're going to give them a shout out on a future video. The first defensive line target here that we're going to talk about, Derry Chuck Norris. I love the nickname, throwing that Chuck in there. He's a 3-star recruit in the 2025 class, the number 578 overall recruit, the number 54 defensive lineman, and the number 81 player out of the state of Florida. And I can see the comments coming in already about this guy. Why are we going after somebody who's ranked 578 overall? The recruiting's going downhill. Kalen DeBoer can't recruit. At the end of the day, I don't think that's very accurate considering the notable offers that he's gotten from teams in the SEC and in the Big Ten: Arkansas, Florida, LSU, Miami, Michigan State, Missouri, Texas, Texas A&M. Those are all really good schools who would like to have him. If they're giving him offers, they obviously don't agree with the recruiting rankings and where they have him at. That's 247 Sports composite rankings, so it's kind of overall all the recruiting sites kind of put together in an algorithm. It comes out to those numbers. But from what we saw last year in 2023 from him, he put up some impressive numbers as a junior in high school. 70 total tackles in 11 games played, 13 sacks, 9.5 TFLs, and 20 quarterback pressures. Now, I will make note, these stats came from On3. 247 Sports they were close, but they're a little bit different, so we just went with these stats. He also had 86 yards rushing with 1 touchdown. It's pretty hilarious that a defensive line recruit has 86 yards rushing and a touchdown on offense. That's just absolutely hilarious to me. Alabama only has 1 defensive line commit so far in this class, that being Antonio Coleman, and he's already flipped twice now. He was committed to Alabama, and then Nick Saban retired, so he flipped to Auburn. And then Kalen DeBoer was hired. Alabama got back in the conversation there, and he flipped back to Alabama. Back to Norris here, though. He is thinking about taking a trip in the summer. You know, he was just given that scholarship offer, so early stages for him in the conversations with Alabama. But he would also possibly like to take an in-season trip. And also, a little fun fact for you, he just actually figured out recently that he is Keon Keeley's cousin. So it would be cool to get those family ties as well on this Alabama team. He does have 4 scheduled visits so far: Georgia Tech on May 31st, Miami on June 7th, Minnesota on June 14th, and Purdue on June 21st. Now, he does also want to take a visit to West Virginia in between the Minnesota and Purdue trips. That one's not scheduled quite yet, but if he does schedule that, we'll update that for you guys. And if he schedules one for an Alabama visit, we will also let you guys know, whether that be a short or a segment here on one of our videos. Now, since we're talking about the defensive line here on today's show, I want to know in the comments right now, what is your confidence level in Alabama's defensive line in 2024? There's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of guys coming back in that defensive line. But it is a different scheme that they're going to be playing this year. So let me know in the comments section, scale your confidence level 1 to 10, 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. It is the pinned comment of today's video, so that if that ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there and go vote. Our second defensive line target on today's show, that's 3-star defensive lineman Charles House, plans on making a commitment decision on June 22nd. Now, same thing as Norris. House, not necessarily the highest ranked recruit. He's right there, 599 overall, so that's even lower than Norris was. 58 overall defensive lineman, and the number 14 player from the state of North Carolina. And on April 13th, actually, he put his top 6 out. This was his top 6 right here. Georgia, Miami, Florida, Florida State, Tennessee, and LSU. So I think the same thing applies where just because he's ranked, pretty low compared to some standards that we would have probably seen from the Nick Saban era, he's still got a lot of good schools that want him. And this is also, I think, very important. Alabama didn't offer him until May 2nd. That was 2.5 weeks after he came out with his top 6. So I don't necessarily think this is the final top 6 for him. He does have 3 official visits scheduled. Alabama on May 31st. I'll keep saying it. That's a really big weekend for Alabama in terms of getting recruits on campus. It's going to be a big one for them. Georgia on June 7th and Tennessee on June 14th. Now, the On3 recruiting prediction machine has Tennessee, Alabama, and South Carolina as the top 3 so far right now. So going back to that top 6, I don't necessarily think that's, anything final. Tennessee, 35.1%, Alabama, 30.7%, and South Carolina at 17.8%. So Alabama's still in the hunt for him in his recruitment. NFL rookie jerseys are on sale at our sponsor today, Fanatics. Go to chatsports.com/NFL jerseys. They have J.C. Latham's jersey right there. He's going to be wearing number 55 this year for the Tennessee Titans. They've also got Kool-Aid McKinstry, Tyrion Arnold, Jace McClellan, any of those guys that, signed the deal. They don't have Marvin Harrison Jr. Any of those guys that signed that deal with Fanatics, they have their jersey on their website right now. One more time for you guys, that's chatsports.com/NFL jerseys. The last thing I want to go into on today's show, Greg McElroy made some comments on a podcast about Kalen DeBoer's chances of winning a national championship here at Alabama. Not necessarily in his first year, just overall. He gave him a 75% chance to win a national championship at Alabama. We'll go into the full quote here in just a second, but make sure you are subscribed right here to the Alabama Football Report. We are so close to 18,000 subscribers here, currently at 17,726. We need 274 more to hit that 18,000 subscriber mark. I also want to make note, the Michigan Football Report has 31.4 thousand subscribers. I want to catch them during next season. We're going to be doing watch parties. They don't do as many watch parties as we're going to do here on the Alabama Football Report. So make sure you are subscribed right now and make sure you turn those notifications on as well. This is the quote from Greg McElroy. He said he gave him a 75% chance to win a national championship, and then this is the quote following that. He said, "I believe Kalen DeBoer will win a national championship at Alabama. I don't think it's going to take very long. This guy, in his career, has only 2 losses against ranked opponents, 1 against Michigan and 1 when he was at Fresno State. He was undefeated at Washington against ranked opponents up until the final game as the Washington head coach. That was the national championship last year against Michigan. He can do more with less, and he has proven that at both Fresno and at Washington than previously when he was the coordinator at Indiana and some of his previous stops. He immediately steps into a roster that is deeper and probably a little bit more complete than the roster that he had at Washington. Now, I don't think that he has the weapons that he had at Washington, but I do think that the personnel on the defensive side of the ball is drastically better at multiple spots. Now, surprisingly, I actually agree with Greg McElroy. Pretty much everything he said here. I don't really necessarily agree with a lot of things he says. I think he overcompensates a lot, trying not to be called an Alabama homer, which, I don't see how that's necessarily a negative thing if, a lot of the things are true. But, it is what it is. DeBoer, I do agree, does inherit a better roster here at Alabama than he had both at Fresno State and at Washington. Obviously, he did a good job with what he had there, and especially on the offensive side of the ball, the wide receiver targets he had last year. Rome Odunze was just absolutely insane. Went number 9 overall to the Bears, and they had a couple other guys who were really, really good, including Jeremy Bernard, who ended up being wide receiver 4 for them, who, coming over here to Alabama, he's going to have the second most receiving yards after Kobe Prentice of all of Alabama's wide receivers. So I think, he's going to be able to put it together, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. And on the offensive side of the ball, I have no worries about what he's going to be able to do with Jalen Milroe and with everybody that he has on, weapons-wise on this team, including, you think about the running backs as well. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, even Richard Young. He didn't have anybody like that at Washington. So I have confidence that he's going to be able to do even better at Alabama, including the resources as well that Alabama has there. Now, DeBoer is 12-2 in his time as a head coach against top 25 ranked teams. And we're going to break them all down, but I want you to look at how close a lot of these games were as well. 2021 at Fresno, he lost. His first loss against a ranked team was to Oregon. Now, that was against Mario Cristobal when he was the coach there as well, so keep that in mind. UCLA, he beat them 40-37, another close game. San Diego State, 30-20, relatively close game, 2-score game there. In 2022, when he took over at Washington, won a relatively close game against Michigan State, won a 3-point game against Oregon State, won a 3-point game against Oregon, and then won a 7-point game against Texas. And it just, from there, Steve Sarkisian as well as Dan Lanning beat both of those guys. And I think that's really, really important. You can beat good coaches, 2 of the best coaches in the country, in my opinion. We look over to 2023 in his time at Washington. Another close game against Oregon. Another close game at USC. Beat Caleb Williams last year. Utah, 35-28. Beat them. Oregon State, 2-point game, 2-point win on the road. And then he beat Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship last year. And then he went on to beat Texas, again, Steve Sarkisian, in the college football playoff game. And then the only other game that he lost against a top 25 team was Michigan in the national championship. You look to his record against 2 of the better coaches in college football right now, Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning. He's 3-0 against Dan Lanning and 2-0 against Steve Sarkisian. I think that just speaks to everything that Kalen DeBoer is able to bring to Alabama as a head coach. He's won a national championship as well. I understand it was an NAIA, but as a player and as a coach, he won national championships there. And as a player, he built them. He was a part of going from the ground up. They were terrible when he got there as an athlete, and he ended up being a part of that program, just like some of those players like a Julio Jones or a Mark Ingram that was able to build the program with Nick Saban in his first couple of years at Alabama. So I have no worries about Kalen DeBoer. I definitely think he's going to win a national championship in the next 3 years, maybe, at Alabama. I have faith in it, but I want to hear from you guys. What % chance do you think Kalen DeBoer is going to win a national championship at Alabama? Scale it for me, 1 to 100. What % chance will Kalen DeBoer win a national championship at Alabama?